My name is Benjamin Henning. I am an associate consultant with RGW Consulting, which is a boutique consulting firm that's focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion based in Oak Park. And the RGW are the initials of our founder and CEO, Rashida Graham Washington, but it's also descriptive words that describe how we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's through reimagining and generating wonder. We like to do that through curiosity. We like to dive in and mine for information and gather data to learn as much as we can about your organization, in this situation about the village of Glen Ellyn, and figure out where you guys are as far as your diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, and figure out what we could do to custom tailor a plan to help you fine tune and move to the next level and get that strategic planning in place and actually execute and live the diversity, equity, inclusion that you actually want to do and accomplish within your village. So that's what we do here. And what I'm working on, I started with RGW just a couple months ago. So it's been a fun process going through with Glen Ellyn and seeing all the amazing work that's happening in the village and the College of DuPage and different organizations in Glen Ellyn. It's really inspiring to me. And so what I've been doing is going through and holding listening sessions. Myself and my colleagues. And we are just sitting down and having conversations with all the different stakeholders, whether it is the public library, it's different organizations. We even had on Saturday, we had a session where a Facebook group that has over 400 members that started up in June of 2020, that has 400 members in Glen Ellyn, and they were on the call to discuss what activities they're actually doing to enhance and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in Glen Ellyn. So these are called discovery protocols, and we're going to take the next 45 minutes or so, and I take people through literally 4 questions. I ask all the different stakeholders the same 4 questions to find out what those common themes are, so we can really figure out where we're at. Once that's completed, once we go through all of this work, we'll be putting together what we call an after action report. So we will aggregate all of the data and all the information that we've mined and put together a very comprehensive plan to present back to the organization with what we identified as strengths, what we identified as opportunities that you might have, different challenges that are out there. But most of all, we're going to come back with our recommended next steps based on everything that you're doing and where we see that you could go. We will come back with recommended next steps to help you guys in your journey. So does anyone have any questions so far? All right. I am also here with my colleague, Daryl Washington. Daryl, if you want to wave. Daryl is a lead consultant for RGW as well. So the two of us are here to take you through this process. Just a couple housekeeping notes. To the best extent possible, we like to have cameras on. When you're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, it can be a very sensitive topic, and we don't want to have anything lost with a black screen and not be able to see facial expressions. But again, that's not mandatory, but if you're able in an environment where you're able to do that, we do appreciate having the cameras on. Also, if you'd like to use your preferred pronouns, please put them by your name on your screen so we can refer to you the way that you would like to be referred to. This is being recorded. Everything done by the Village of Glen Ellyn is recorded for FOIA purposes and documentation. So just be aware of that. Typically in listening sessions that aren't done with a public entity, we do not record those so that we can have, make sure that we have an open and honest conversation. But even though it's recorded, I'd like you to be as open and honest as possible. This is a safe space. This is a space to talk about what's happening, what we're seeing, what we'd like to see, so that we can move the needle forward. I will be taking notes, just so you're aware of that. And with that, I think we can just kick it off. So I'm just going to dive right into the first question. The first question is, if you had someone coming from out of state that was interested in moving to Glen Ellyn, and they said, hey, Ben, tell me about what's going on in the city as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion. What would you tell to that person that has no idea what is happening in Glen Ellyn, whether it's the schools, the library, different organizations? What's the current state of affairs that you would tell them? And anyone can just chime in if you'd like.
I could start. This is Erica Krabiel, and I work as the Chief Communications Officer in District 41. And we had a board meeting last night, and we had a presentation about our language programs. And I don't know if everyone knows, but we offer Spanish as a part of our core curriculum, a half hour a day. And there was a story that one of the board members told about how we had students on a soccer field with the park district, and there was a student who did not speak English, they spoke Spanish. And all the District 41 kids were speaking Spanish to him and including him. So that's just kind of one example of how we bring people together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Inclusive.
If I can, Ben?
Yeah.
I'm a colleague of Erica's. I'm the school board president at District 41, and the story that she shared with you actually grows out of the efforts that go back some years of the district to integrate into the curriculum a foreign language for elementary school students that not only extends and deepens students' ability to speak a second language, but provides lots of opportunities for sharing different cultural experiences and sort of developing a competency in understanding people's origin stories through their language, through their culture. And we're not just seeing what we're very excited about, our great academic achievements, but as Erica was noting, stories of friendships, stories of kids reaching out to other children from different backgrounds and using this new language competency to have a greater understanding of who they are as people. So that would be something that I would stand on the street corner on a soapbox,
right,
and say, if you want to be in a school system that can begin at an early age to help develop greater cultural sensitivity, come and talk to me.
Nice. Thank you, Bob. Yes, Julie.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for this session and for everyone who's put this together. I want to speak today as an advocate for people with intellectual disabilities and a parent of a person with an intellectual disability. And I would say that Glen Ellyn is really quite a welcoming place for this audience from birth through adult. We're doing a lot in the educational arena, from preschool through College of DuPage, social, recreational. We're starting to see people hiring our folks within businesses in Glen Ellyn. And we're starting to hear discussions about affordable housing, which is a very important piece for our adults that want more independence. Right. So I'm excited about what we have and what's coming. And I would say that for someone moving here, it would be a very welcoming place with a bright future for people with this intellectual disabilities.
Great. Yes, Ivor? Ivor.
Yeah. Good morning. Yeah, having lived in Glen Ellyn for many years, if I was speaking to someone who was going to be moving here, I would say that Glen Ellyn is predominantly white, maybe 90–95%, largely Christian. And I would say that it hosts the College of DuPage, which is a tremendous institution that is very, very diverse in many respects, especially in terms of its student body. It is, I think, a very welcoming place in terms of that you'll find many, many people and wonderful people and institutions in the community. And one of those that I have come across that focuses on race and diversity is called Pizza and Social Justice. Mm-hmm. So I think those are some of the things that I would mention to somebody who was interested in moving here.
Yeah, I just heard about the Pizza and Social Justice this weekend and had to look that up. That's a fantastic program and something you guys should be proud of. Definitely. Yes, Erica Nelson.
Hi, Erica Nelson. I want to echo Julie's comments about thinking you for putting this together, in particular, Don Bussey, our director of the library, who's initiated all of this. And I think I would add what to what Ivor has said, that there is that the community is very welcoming, and there's a lot of support. I would say in tandem with what Erica Crabiel said and Dr. Bruno said, that our school districts, District 41, up to 87 and then 89, help to drive a lot of that ownership of inclusion, starting it at young ages and really, encouraging and engaging that, right? So I think that there's certain forces that drive some of that, and that visibility of the need for that. I would also say that Glen Ellyn has, like all communities, different opinions and different sides to it. And I need to share a really disappointing part of our community from this last summer that I raised with the Chamber of Commerce on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Glen Ellyn and our position on equity. And that was outreach by some members of the community to local businesses who were upset, unhappy with the fact that they had Black Lives Matter signs and were promoting acceptance and support of Black Lives Matter's comments and movement. So that was personally disappointing and frustrating to know that in the midst of a public health crisis, a pandemic where the local businesses were struggling, and many of us supporting them, that you would have a group of citizens, some covert, some more overt, to want to diminish their right as business owners to make a public statement.
Right.
And I think that we could have, as a community, spoken to that more specifically as a village and also independently. So that's a disappointment, and I think that that is a part of our community.
Yeah, definitely. That's come up a couple different times in my conversations that happened, and that is definitely disturbing. But it's a reality. That's what's happening. There are people that we need to reach, and that's why we're having these conversations. We'll keep providing an environment where they want to be part of what we're doing.
Right. Ben, can I just add, and then I'll back out of the conversation. I think I want to add to that voice, and that is, after the meeting this weekend, I talked to a couple of friends of mine, and we were on. And one of the things we talked about is that these engage people who want to be here, who want to have these conversations. So I think one of the challenges is, and I'll just put this out as a question, is how do we engage some of the members of our community that we really want to talk to and bring into the conversation? Maybe asking the question, what are we afraid about when it comes to diversity and inclusion?
Right.
What are our fears about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how do we more overtly, consciously, right, draw that conversation and those partners into the conversation?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Tanya, I think you had your hand up.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I just kind of want to echo slightly on Ms. Nelson's comments. I've been a resident of Glen Ellyn for about 7 years, and I have lived here long enough to call it Mayberry and love certain aspects of it, and feel welcomed in certain areas of it, and also just our primary reason for being here was the schools. And as the mother of a Black and Puerto Rican boy, I am very happy with the level of services my son is receiving in the schools, the level of support he's getting. He has a 504 plan, and that is, I couldn't ask for more in terms of my happiness for his level of education. That said, I could ask for a whole lot more when it comes to just feeling like this community serves all of my needs and wants in terms of cultural and diverse opportunities and offerings. I try to do a good job as the daughter also of a small business owner to support our local businesses, but I have found some businesses more welcoming than others in my approach. And the ones that are supportive, I go back to. The ones that aren't, I don't. And I guess I would, I still feel the need to leave Glen Ellyn in order to get some of my social and cultural needs met. And I wish it wasn't so. So I think I could very enthusiastically encourage someone considering to move to Glen Ellyn if they were a parent who wanted excellent schools and opportunities for their kids. I'll also shout out our son got to participate in the full day kindergarten at COD, which we loved. He went to the preschools there and uses their summer camps, which we hope to do in the future. But we've also had experiences at other institutions that I won't name that let me know that I have to be a very big advocate for my child because some people just don't get it. And some people don't realize the harm of boys being boys or inconsequential actions, especially when your child is the only one of a certain group and things are happening to them and they're too young to understand what's going on. So I will say that while we're happy here now, it would not be odd to expect us to perhaps move once our son graduates from Glenbard West.
Tanya, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'd like to kind of echo that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
My name's Tamika. I actually have 3 children that have come through the school system. We've lived here probably like 12 years. So I have 2 sons that attended Glenbard West and Hadley or combination. And I now have a daughter who actually started off in kindergarten at Abraham Lincoln. And so she's come all the way through. So something that I will say definitely positive is when there were the Black Lives Matters discussions and protests, many of her teachers gave students opportunities to speak to those in class and to speak to how those affected them. And her, as the previous mother said, being probably one of the only African-American children in the class, her being able to not only have the opportunity to share her thoughts, but share them honestly and try to help her other students understand the purpose and the positive aspects of it and not just the negative, I think was important for her, and her feeling that she had the right to do that. I appreciate that the school allowed, or the teachers allowed. There was a very negative situation previously where there were some racist comments made, and that upset her greatly. I was appreciative of how the principal and the administration immediately said, we know about it and we're taking care of it. Now, as a mother, I would like to have had more details on how it was taken care of, because it kind of leaves you to think, well, did they actually do anything? Or was it just a little slap on the wrist? Right. But I also understand that there's a privacy factor. But I think the acknowledgement of it is very important. The fact that leaders and administration and hopefully parents are acknowledging that it's not okay and helping, our children to learn is very important.
Yep.
On the flip side of that, as she mentioned just previously, there are many times where it's well known that you're the only one. I recently found out that she had a little bullying that had happened when she was younger that she never told me about. And had I known about it, I would have handled it immediately. Right. But she kind of suffered through it. And so I think it's extremely important for, and to women as well. There's challenges, boys to girls, and so I think it's very important when we talk about gender roles, gender identification, race, cultural differences. It's very important that these conversations are out there and that every leader, every administration, every parent is stressing the importance of diversity inclusion. Because when you are a part of a group that is less than 10% of the total population, it's very difficult. And it's very difficult to always have your voice heard or to be taken seriously. So I moved to Glen Ellyn specifically based on the school system. When my eldest son got ready to start high school, I said, we have to go where the schools meet the requirements that I need for you all to have for a future. But I must admit, as a parent coming in, I had to tell them, here are some things you have to look out for immediately. You know what I mean? Both of my sons went on to be in the Air Force, and they were great, and they loved Glenbard West, but they've all had their challenges and their struggles. They have a family background that lets them know, don't back down, don't be afraid, don't feel like you can't say, you know, you are who you are. And I'm glad that they have that, but it really needs to be put out there that certain things are just unacceptable and will not be tolerated, and that it's more important to understand each other than to shame or belittle anybody for another race, another gender, you know, whatever. Their identity, whatever. It needs to be a conversation and not something that is looked upon as negatively.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Jody.
Mute there, I'm unmuted. I would have, so our question right now is someone coming here, new person moving here, what is Glen Ellyn doing with regard to DEI? Before the 23rd, I would have said they're doing the generic corporate diversity bullet point in their employee manual, which is great, it's fine, it's important. But after the meeting with the village leaders that you guys held on the 23rd, I mean, I do feel like the leaders of this community are really trying to deepen that and make it be real listening and make it be, you know, substantial. At their corporate, remember, they're still corporate leaders in a way. So policies and programs and discussions and speaking to their leaders, I feel like a lot is going on, but we live as just a resident at the person level. And so to me, the big key, which is the hard thing to do, is how do you get to the hearts of the parents who are, and the kids, and because that's where the damage is done, right? That's where the one-on-one things are done to individuals of color. And so I guess now I would tell someone that there is a lot going on, but I'm not sure still yet how deep it's going to affect an individual person of color who's, you know, and I have a young daughter, so I'm going to say in a school system, but even adult residents that are not 100% welcome all the time. So that's my point.
Thank you, Jody. Yep, I completely hear that. M. Senek. And then Nancy, I'll come to you after that. I'm sorry, I didn't see that hand up there.
So by way of a little introduction, I'm one of the trustees in the village, and in the interest of full disclosure, I'm also a candidate for village president. So what I would tell someone is, first, we've passed a resolution at the village level denouncing any form of bigotry, hatred, or discrimination, and promoting diversity, equality, and inclusion. And that's a nice thing to say, and it's necessary to set the tone for the discussion. But we also have a Human Relations Commission that heretofore has not been staffed by prior administrations. And it's my hope that we will use this forum and staff the Human Relations Commission so we can continue this discussion. So this is just not a one and done experience, but we will provide people with an opportunity and a forum where if they have concerns, they can come to the village and express them and know that those concerns are going to be conveyed to the village board and that the village board will take action if they deem it appropriate. By way of just some illustrations, one thing I want to make clear is we at the village board are listening. I see Mark Francis on this call, our village manager, and we are interested in hearing from the community what issues they believe exist and what solutions they are proposing. In terms of inclusiveness, we are aggressively pursuing affordable housing so that people have an opportunity to live in the village and participate in the school systems and the other services that are provided. We have done this with the current development at Glen Crossing by setting aside portions of the development for affordable housing. I have been actively engaged with United DuPage in locating a site in the village for affordable housing development, and that discussion will continue. And finally, I want to assure everyone on the call There is zero tolerance in this village for any type of bigotry, hatred, or discrimination. If we find that there are incidents where that occurs in terms of some type of racist graffiti, those incidents will be prosecuted and investigated aggressively, and we will do everything we can to bring to justice people who perpetrate those kinds of crimes. So, but more importantly, we want to hear from the community. We want to hear from the people on this call about what they believe the issues are and what we can do to address them. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. Nancy.
Yes, my husband and I have lived in Glen Ellyn for about 15 years. We don't have children, so we're not as aware of what's going on in the school. So it's very, very interesting to hear. But what I wanted to remind people of is there are really two Glen Ellens. The area that is east of Route 53, most people think is Lombard. And this neighborhood is highly diverse, a lot of South Asians, Hispanic, and lower income people live here. We have many, many apartment buildings. And when I tell people where I live, those even who have been in Glen Ellyn for many years say, oh no, that's Lombard. I didn't think that was Glen Ellyn at all. So this side of that divide is kind of unique, and I'm glad that there are opportunities for children. We see many getting on the school buses every day quite happily. And also good to know that there is some push for affordable housing, because we've been thinking of moving out of the area because the place where we've been living is having extremely high rent increases as they renovate.
Yep.
So with Ivor, my husband and I are part of Pizza and Social Justice, and we encourage and invite anyone who's interested to join us in our twice a month Zoom meetings and discussions.
That's awesome. Thank you, Nancy. Karen, we'll go to you next.
Hi there. Just wanted to get back to the initial question that you raised, which is what you would tell people who were thinking about moving to Glen Ellyn. And I think we've lost that track a little bit. But one of the things, I've been here, I don't know, it's about 7 years or so. One of the things that I found was that Glen Ellyn has a nickname of the Bubble. And there's even a Facebook group called The Bubble. And I think people in some ways are a little bit proud of that. In fact, there were political signs about, making sure that this area doesn't become, the new Cook County sort of a thing. And so I think that when we think about Glen Ellyn, we are predominantly white. We feel like we have some sort of insulation here, but that we do need to figure out ways to pop that bubble, because that's the perception. And that's what I would tell people potentially, that, there's a lot of really good intentioned people, but in principle, there's a comfort level that people in Glen Ellyn have with this sort of protectionist bubble.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's the feedback people would need to hear to make an educated decision if they're going to move to a new city, a new town. Thank you, Karen. All right. So, Kristen.
Hi, my name's Kristen, and I have lived in Glen Ellyn for 30 years. I think I moved here because of the schools and close proximity to Chicago. But I want to echo what Karen said. And I'm co-president of Legal Women Voters with Erica Nelson. And I want to say that this kind of forum, we need to do this on a regular basis. This is an excellent forum for discussion. And I think this should be, whoever coordinates the library and so forth, I think we need to do this on a regular basis. I think the community is coming together. One community, I belong to First Congregational Church of Glen Ellyn. We are open and affirming. I really feel like this is something we need to do on a regular basis. And I would support that. One more thing I want to say is that I wish our community was more diverse. I mean, I think Glenbard West has a more diverse community than the actual downtown Glen Ellyn, because it feeds into from the other communities. But I want our community to be more diverse. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kristen. All right. So I'm going to move on to my next question here, which is what policies or people, processes are in place within your village that are visible that you know of that support a commitment towards diversity, equity, inclusion? What's tangible? What's actually out there right now? People in a position of power, policies, procedures. What's happening in Glen Ellyn? And we'll start with Tanya.
So this is a shout out to our wonderful library. Full disclosure, I am the wife of one of our library board of trustees, but even if he wasn't, I would say this anyway. One of the things I love about, I have a 10-year-old son, and our library is set up in the children's space to be very welcoming for all children. One of the neatest things I saw before we became residents here, and I don't know if the program still continues, but they were encouraging children to read to dogs to help build their confidence. And I loved that. The other thing that they do is they have some very prominent displays of books from diverse authors that we regularly utilize. And in their newsletter, they feature specific things to speak to people of color authors and to raise awareness of that. So as a parent who utilizes that, I appreciate it not only for the racial diversity, but just thinking of different diversity of thought and diversity in how we learn, just helping to build that confidence there. So I just want to shout out our library. I'm happy to give any portion of my tax dollars to their success.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I'm sure Dawn loves to hear that. All right, who's next? I gotta flip my screen here. Oh, you got it? Mark, you wanna go again?
Yeah, I'll go again. I just want to follow up my earlier comments by saying, again, the purpose of staffing the Human Relations Commission with stakeholders, many of the people who are on this call, I would like to see join that commission, volunteer to be members. Is to continue this discussion and not to allow this to just be a one-time seminar or webinar, but to really demonstrate to the community that we are interested in hearing from you. And not only that, but I would like to see not only residents, adult residents, but I would like to see some students from Glenbard West and the other high schools join that commission, so that that commission is staffed with a broad spectrum of people who can provide feedback to the board, not only about what life is like in the village for adults, but what students are experiencing in the schools. So I'm hopeful that once we get that commission staffed, that we will have students on that commission who can tell us things that we need to be aware of and how we can address them on a going forward basis.
All right, thank you. So back to the question, the second question is what policies and procedures people are in place right now that are actually moving the needle that people can see. So Jill, let's go to you.
Hi, I would like to reiterate the point made about the dual language program offered at Churchill. My kids are lucky enough to be in that program, and through that program, I have become a member of our Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee, which is trying to be an advocate for our parents, our bilingual parents, our parents who are raising bilingual children. As you can see, being presented here, who is represented here is the non-person of color English speaker from our Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee. And I would really like to see that change, that we could have somebody, one of our other representatives who speaks Spanish being here as well to bring in their thoughts. I would like to give a shout out to our park district. There are scholarships offered through our park district to make it more accessible for many of our families. One of the areas that they have made it more accessible is our Churchill families who are from another town in Carroll Stream are allowed to be members of our park district and considered residents. So that helps. And then they can also be considered for scholarships for their families to be able to take part in park district activities. That has been a really significant part, I know, for many of our families that are in our bilingual parent advice. I would say those are probably some of the biggest areas. And then kudos again to the library. I think they're really trying to reach out and improve that cultural awareness and multiple language offerings in their library.
Yep, yep. Jill, thank you for that. Jody, we'll go over to you.
Thanks. I would again advise everybody, I think there's going to be a tape of it. If you want to hear a whole bunch of policies and they're put in place, some for many years, go back to the 23rd meeting if you get a chance. All the schools are doing equity audits. COD is doing a whole bunch of things, the park district, the library, the village. I also want to throw out a couple statistics to kind of frame some of our discussion from that meeting. Mark Franz put out some statistics from the prior audit, that's not this audit, or I mean census, that Glen Ellyn is 86% Caucasian, and then Glenbard West, no, this might be all of District 87. I think all of District 87 has 52% students of color. Just to frame some of our discussion, somebody said 95% white for Glen Ellyn as a village, and that's a little high. But one of the best intersections I've had, which wasn't a policy, but there's been multiple churches in Glen Ellyn that have held sacred conversations on race and talking frankly and in prayer about white privilege, and just a whole world of knowledge I've never had before. So I would suggest everybody, if you want to really dive deep, to go to your faith community, or if we could have something like that in a non-faith situation for those who aren't comfortable with religion. It was amazing learning experience as a person who had a lot to learn. So that's not a policy, but that's a program that the couple churches in Glen Ellyn have done.
Right on. Thank you, Jody. Erica Nelson.
Just quickly, another kind of project that's been working on, and this was one of the non-for-profits that spoke, our executive director, Leah Harding, the Glen Ellyn Children's Resource Center. So this year is celebrating its 20th year. And one of the things that we committed to, I serve on the board under the leadership of our board president, Celia Rohde, and our executive director, Leah Harding, is to take on a years plus, because you're never done with this, long accountability task force that some of us are serving on, to really look at how the resource center is speaking to and shifting really our understanding through policy and our programs on how we engage inclusion. To Jody's point, in Glen Ellyn District 41, and one indicator really, of course, of inclusivity or exclusivity is our poverty. And people are shocked when they find out that Churchill Elementary School, where my kids went, is, I believe, still at about 42% low income. So we know that all these things are connected. They're not a disassociated piece of data, right? And as Dr. Bob Bruno has often said in leadership on District 41, it shouldn't, your zip code shouldn't depend the education that you get, right? And the opportunities that are afforded to you, right? So I think that all ties in, but the Glen Ellyn Children's Resource Center under leadership of our president and executive director is taking this on and owning the fact that this is a long haul and really great, important work. And we are buoyed by it, right? We are energized by it, but you have to decide that that's a policy you're going to own and a project you're going to take on. So yeah. There is some of that, I think, happening very diligently across the village.
Thank you, Erica. I want to give two call outs here. Bob just put a note up in the chat to reach out to him directly for these efforts to continue that conversation. I thought that's fantastic. And Dawn also put in the chat earlier that you can go on the website and get all the links to the sessions that we had on Saturday. There was a 2-hour morning session, a 2-hour afternoon session. And there's some really, really good information in there from the presenters and the conversation. So please check that out. Anyone else have anything to say about policies that are in place? All right, the third question I'm going to move on to, because we're down to our last 10 minutes or so here. This is interesting to me. What are the roadblocks that are in the way right now in Glen Ellyn that are preventing or slowing down the process and progress with DEI? What are the roadblocks? What's standing in our way? And I see Tanya, she's got something right out of the gate. So I'll throw it to you, Tanya.
Resistance to change. I think, at least in some of the communication and conversations that I've had, there is an association with tradition as kind of code for not wanting to change. I see it reflected in things like when I see signs that say "Save Maine," or like, when I think about what that means to evolve. And so I moved here right when Guy's shoe store, I apologize if I said the name wrong, was preparing to close. And just seeing how the community reacted to that, it was more focused on what it was losing than what it might gain with new possibilities and opportunities for that. And sorry, my son's in remote learning right next to me. I got to have a conversation with someone in the community who we had a very friendly relationship, and they were sharing with me some of their thoughts about some of the change that was happening in Glen Ellyn. And I can appreciate from their perspective how they don't want to see the community they grew up with be pushed out. But at the same time, I think it ignores some of the bigger changes that we're seeing in many communities. And I think that someone had mentioned it earlier, like, what are we afraid of when it comes to that diversity and this feeling of, instead of embracing what we might gain as a community by embracing it, there's more of a focus on what could be lost. And so that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that's really great. Thank you, Tanya. Jody.
You're welcome to go to somebody else if I'm getting too much. I think in my version of what Tanya was saying, it's a concept of social capital. I think, and this goes to my point about the hearts of the parents. This is a bedroom community and we want our kids to thrive, and anything that might set them back isn't something you want to do. And unfortunately, I think the concept of social capital is to keep away from impoverished kids and Black and brown kids. And not if they're the star athlete, but if they're a generic, just regular kid, because they aren't going to improve your social capital. And again, that policies are great, but this goes to the hearts of the individuals in our community and the parents raising the kids.
Right. Thank you, Jody. Bob Bruno, or Dr. Bruno, sorry.
Bob is fine, thanks. So I think that a mentality that gets in the way is this, what I would call a sort of a scarcity effect, that if in fact any of our institutions shows greater sensitivity and attention to underserved communities, to people of color, to minority groups, to low-income students, that somehow a zero-sum impact occurs, so that to be attentive to race and gender and identity is to somehow threaten a dominant group. And to the degree that we can demonstrate that this isn't a zero-sum game, that it is actually adding value that enhances everyone's identity and ability to live a peaceful, meaningful life, we're in a better position to overcome this notion that there's just scarce resources. There's just too little out there, and I'm in some sort of deadly Hunger Games competition with others, right? I don't want to overstate it, but so if we can address that notion and demonstrate that mentality is faulty, I think that is a way to work on this roadblock. So my 2 cents.
Right on. Thank you, sir. Erica Nelson.
Very quickly, I think an obstacle or roadblock can be social media.
Yes.
I think that is just, when I served my time on the board, I made a personal position not to respond and get into this back and forth. because board work happens at the board table. I think that this kind of work is so important to have these kind of conversations. This is when community comes together. But there's some social media out there that is just not only not helpful, but just, you know, just really dehumanizing.
Yeah.
And point, you know, kind of pits people against each other. And I think that that's creates a lot of dissent for people.
Yep, it can be very toxic. Absolutely. Ivor.
Yeah, I think one of the obstacles or roadblocks, and this is true for many, many communities across the country, is we still have structural segregation in Glen Ellyn, as we do in many communities. I'm sure if we plotted each block in the community, we would find clusters or at least hundreds of blocks and neighborhoods that have no diversity or minimal diversity. So I think one of the things that calls us to do is to make an extra effort to find and seek out diversity in our larger community, because we may not have it immediately in our neighborhood. But I think that's one of the huge structural and historical roadblocks that we have to recognize and deal with.
Absolutely. Yep. Got to break down the structure. Is that Mark Franz? You ready? Yep.
Yes, if I could, I just wanted to follow up on Dr. Bruno's point. I think it's right on target. I'm just wondering, I don't think we can solve it in the next 3 minutes today, but maybe something for us to continue to discuss is how to kind of promote the fact that this is not a zero-sum game. We need some strategies and tools to allow us to do that as leaders and just as members of the community. So I'd love for you and Rashida to kind of help us on that part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Jess.
I think another barrier is that there's some who have organized around this not so subtle idea of safety as opposition to some of these programs, and playing on the fears of people, and going back to previous comment about, you know, actual yard signs about not being the next Cook County, and it's repulsive to me, but it's out there.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Well, in my last couple of minutes, I'm just going to go to the last question, which is, what is the very best next step that could be taken in Glen Ellyn to make an impact? So we're not talking about the pie in the sky idea and not a 50 or 100 grand deal, but what could we actually do to move the needle in the next few months? Something easy. Tanya.
So one thought I have, and I say this knowing that I just learned about the pizza and social justice activities on this call, but I know that the Civic Center hosts Coffee with Cops. I wonder if perhaps there might be courageous conversations with community leaders, specifically around D&I related topics, and to Dr. Bruno's point, educating about why this isn't a zero-sum game and what could be gained from this. I would encourage us to also, as we think about whatever our next steps are, to consider that, having these things either in the evening or on the weekend may allow people to more easily participate, because some of us are in dual income homes where we're both working and can't attend a Tuesday 9 a.m. meeting. In COVID, this is a little easier. We can kind of fit it in on a Zoom schedule, but that's just one thought I had. Perhaps trying to do something at the Civic Center with using our community leaders who are already doing such great work to help facilitate and kind of create this tipping point of conversations and allies around the work.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. Oops, I missed somebody. Cheryl.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation. I also think maybe one program the library might consider, or anybody, is a program to help people with how to talk to people who disagree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of people would like to be better at that. And even from the conversation today, it's obvious.
Yeah, and they're difficult conversations that we're having, and you have to be honest, you have to be vulnerable, and you have to be willing to make a change. So thank you very much, Cheryl. All right, so it's 11 o'clock or just before. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time, but I just want to reiterate again that this evening I'll be doing this again for another listening session just like this for your community. So please let other people know that they can hop on and find that link on the website, as well as I'll be doing the affinity groups on Thursday afternoon. So those folks will sign up directly through Dawn, I know. And Dawn, with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone. This was amazing and inspiring as it was for me on Saturday as well. So thank you to everyone, and I'll pass it back to Dawn.
Thanks so much to everyone for joining us this morning. I've got some wonderful notes that I've taken and some, I think, buds of some program ideas. Yes, there is another session at 7 p.m. tonight. People do need to register for that session like you did, and that way they are emailed the Zoom info. If they have trouble with that, they can always reach out to me. A lot of times it ends up in spam mail, and I can't help that. We do still have some openings for the affinity-based focus groups on Thursday. Be sure and direct some people my way if you know somebody who's interested in participating in one of those. And again, I invite you to participate in the 4-hour session on Saturday if you have that kind of time to devote. You're going to sign up on the library's website for that by 9 p.m. tomorrow, January 27th. And that way it will also send you the Zoom link so you can participate. Any questions about the programs? Feel free to reach out to me. And thanks again for giving your time to be here to have this important conversation.
Thank you.